This is Mary Schmitt from Cayuse, Western Americana, and I'm sitting with Susan Adams today. And Susan is an extraordinary silversmith from Richmond, Virginia. And she does Western style silversmithing and actually makes some great vessels hand raised from sterling. And we're in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, but you're from Richmond. How on earth did this happen?
Well, a friend of mine called me up one day and said, we're going horseback riding in Wyoming, and you're coming with me. And I said, great. And I came out here and just fell in love with Wyoming, and all of a sudden it was like a whole new world of jewelry and gear and
Kind of foreign.
And I started buying books and studying everything and became inspired to try to do Western jewelry.
So what was the first inspiration for your Western jewelry? How did it all gel?
Okay, well, on the ride, the Wranglers were actually wearing spurs, and I said, I wonder how they make those. So I went to Cody and went to the museum and bought some books, started doing some research, and then found out about the Miller Bit and Spur School.
That's Elmer Miller, who was quite a legendary spur maker in Idaho, right?
Right.
Right.
And so I got up my courage and I spent a month with the Miller family and learned how to make spurs. And then when I came home, I had no tools to make steel spurs. So I started making silver spur rowels.
Spur rowels, and those are the part of the spur that turns. And actually, in the image behind us, there's from a famous Canyon City pair of spurs. That's a Canyon City spur rowel. So the rowel is the thing that turns on the spur. And I think you were the first person to ever turn that into an object of art. Yeah.
Well, while I was out there, I'm like, this stuff is jewelry. It's not just working gear. This is jewelry. So
yeah. Cowboy jewelry.
And so then I became really enchanted with the history of all aspects of Western jewelry, from the Mexican, the Victorian, the gear, and so I've combined all those elements in my jewelry.
But let's go back a little ways. You were already a highly trained silversmith. How did you get into wanting to make silver and manipulate metal?
Well, the Virginia Museum has a really great collection of Fabergé eggs. And I grew up going to the museum looking at these magical things, and I was like, how do you do that? How do you do that? And so I started making jewelry in high school. Then I got a BFA in crafts, and then I got an MFA in metalsmithing from Cranbrook Academy of Art.
Right, from Cranbrook. Okay. Okay. And so as you have progressed through this journey, and you still do a lot of pieces that aren't necessarily Western as well, but when you went to make your first vessel, you know, like this vase, I'm sure this wasn't the first piece, but how did you prepare yourself for doing something the first time?
Oh, well, I mean, the first time I did it was at school.
Okay.
But then when I got out of school, I had no tools, so I had to slowly collect the tools, and you also have to have a lot of courage to take a 12 by 12 inch sheet of sterling silver and start hammering on it.
Right. Yes. So you knew that what you were setting out to make was just an experiment. You were just going to play with the metal maybe and see what it did the first couple of times, or did you really?
Oh no, I'd plan it out.
Okay.
I can draw a pattern and pretty much get right to the pattern.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then what about, like, you've been doing a lot of repoussé work lately. Did you already have something under your belt in terms of doing the repoussé?
I had done some in school, and then I just decided that I love to hammer, and I wanted to combine a little bit more fanciful designs, the birds and the flowers, and just and I took a trip to Mexico and fell in love with Mexico. So.
Sounds like you fall in love easily.
So that's what inspired that.
So and that was going to be my next question, was where do you get your inspiration? Does it come from all over?
Everywhere. Inspiration from everywhere. That's what's so great, is that the Western themes are so rich. I mean, there's the Spanish colonial, there's the Mexican folk jewelry, there's the gear, there's the Victorian, and they all come together. And that's why I really like what I'm doing, because it combines history, and my love of jewelry and jewelry making and metalsmithing.
Well, and the way you design things I mean, is that fun for you to figure out how to make something so seamless the way you do?
Yeah, that's
It's
the fun part.
That's what I personally really appreciate about the way you put things together.
That's the fun part. I mean, is the planning, and then, you know, trying to, sometimes I'll get into a piece and it's like, oh, okay, let's keep it going here, because, you know, you've gotten into something you've never done before.
Right.
But anyway, it's fun to work
Oh,
that out.
that sounds like it's a puzzle. So what's your favorite type of thing to work on?
It changes. I mean, some days it's like, yay, it's wax working day where I'll carve wax, and other days it's like, oh boy, I get to hammer on a bracelet, and other days it's like, let's sit down and get serious. And, you know, what I really like, I like being able to do all the different things, because, like, when you're making a pair of spurs, it has to be precise. I mean, there's not a lot of leeway, because it has to work, and it has to look right, and so I like that too. I like the challenge.
Yeah, that's great. So, it sounds like you're just so happy to go in and work, but there must be times where you need to wind down and relax, and I know you have some interesting hobbies and things you like to do. And,
besides horseback riding?
Besides horseback riding's one of them.
And I collect antique cars.
Yep.
So I have a 1934 Ford,
Yeah.
1959 Cadillac. I'm working on a 46 Oldsmobile convertible. And so that, I have a whole set of car friends, and that's fun too.
That's fun too.
Because that's part history too. And
Yeah.
it's design.
Yeah.
I'm not into the engines and that kind of thing. I'm into the nostalgia value and the styling of the cars. And I collect vintage clothes and hats, and so I can have outfits to go with everything. It's fun.
So you like putting the whole aesthetic together,
Right.
from
I like
you being in the car with the right period thing.
Right, I like to, you know, that little slice in time.
Yeah.
And I like, you know, I like to play the music, and you just get a, you know, a sense of what it was like back then. It's fun.
That's great. What's next on the horizon for you?
Oh, what's next?
Or maybe it should be a secret.
Yeah. We'll see.
That's great.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I like that answer. It's just going to pop into your head.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened with
Great.
this bracelet. One day I just, wow, okay, let's make it like this. And that's the way things happen.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Great. Well, I've been sitting here chatting with Susan Adams, I've been sitting here chatting with Susan Adams. She's a jeweler and metalsmith out of Richmond, Virginia, and won many, many awards. That's another thing I wanted to ask you about, Susan, was your awards, and what, was there any one in particular that stands out as something that you were really proud of?
Oh my God. Yeah, the Don't Fence Me In picture and coaster set. That piece challenged every single inch of my abilities. I mean, it was raising, all kinds of fancy soldering. The handle was cast.
Didn't you cut out all the figures of the bucking horses?
And all the cutting out and the
Yeah.
hammering, and then the fence, each little fence post was hand carved, each little railing was hand stamped, and I mean, it was just really a labor of love.
And that's the one in which, or for which you
Yeah.
won Best of Show at the Western Design Conference, which we were all very proud of you.
I was, yeah, that was
Very,
great.
very proud of you. But the one story I like about the making of that piece, when you got finally to Cayuse with the piece, you told us about soldering with your overalls on and how hot it was outside anyway, and hot in your house.
Oh,
and then what'd you say about the buttons?
It was so hot I had on a tank top, and the buttons on the overalls got so hot they started to burn me because I had the biggest tip on my torch, and the flame was about this big. And I was like, maybe I better slow down a little bit.
I enjoy that story.
I forgot about that one.
That's a good. I have not
I was
forgotten
into
it
it.
because I pictured it and I thought, man, that just sounds like
I was into it. I wasn't.
Yeah, well, it was and still remains a beautiful piece, and thankfully we know where it is,
And
it
he
won't-
uses it every day.
He uses it every day, and I think that's fantastic. Well, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.
Happy trails, right?
Right, happy trails.